Greetings from Cuyahoga Falls. My name is Jehovah. Welcome to War of Rights. It's not Saturday, but this is the UEC, and look at this, the beautiful battalion drill, and something extra special for you guys today. Joining us once again, our friend Evan Hayes, and a very special guest from the American Battlefield Trust, Mr. Garry Adelman himself. Welcome, gentlemen, to the channel.
Leave the space.
Thanks so much for having me.
First company.
So,
Yeah, thank you so much, Joe. Really appreciate it. It's great to be back on the stream.
well, I'm super excited, and I know everybody in the UEC is also excited. You can see the guys lined up here, and Garry, I guess today we're kind of leaning on you for the historical accuracy of what these guys do. We think it's historical. They use Casey's manual, but we're really interested in your point of view.
All right, good. Well, this is my first experience with War of Rights, and I wouldn't lean on me too much when it comes to things like this, but I'll do my best.
Yeah. Well, Joe, important to say, why don't you just give us a breakdown of exactly what this organization is and what they do? You know, the weekly battles, we're kind of familiar with that, but what exactly do they do in the battalion drill, and how does that relate to the purpose of the UEC in general, in particular the 52nd? We were talking about it a little bit before the stream, but it might be good to break it down and say exactly how these guys got organized and what they're really endeavoring to do here.
Yeah, basically, we've been filming these guys on the channel since they actually formed up. Originally, they were a group called the TGV, which that group still exists as the German Volunteers. So if you look at your companies, you're going to have companies like the 56th Virginia there, 18th North Carolina. You've got the 52nd New York, 2nd Delaware. These are all German companies, and they're all Germans playing in those companies. And then you have mixed units, and you'll have 8th Florida, 51st New York. You know, they range from all European countries, England, things like that. So all of these guys get together on the weekend, and the reason they formed up as the UEC was so that they could control and have these beautiful events. This event, the battalion drill, is actually something very special, where everybody gets together. I mean, look at all these men together in one place. They get together to march in formation so that someday, if the servers get large enough, the UEC will enter the server as an army of its own.
Ninth company. Right.
That's really, really fantastic, and it's quite interesting to see just how many people there are in this one organization. You know, one thing we were talking about earlier is, you know, with reenactment, people can definitely join and do reenactments in person, but it's a much more limited affair. And these people are doing this, you know, once a month for the drill, and they do battles every single week. So the level of accuracy and coordination that they've achieved truly is something fascinating to see.
I wish you could see me just sitting here gawking. This is so cool. Very cool.
Yeah,
and what's really interesting, Garry, is that they've done so much work on the art style, trying to get the uniforms and things down. You know, one thing that I always commented whenever I see it is I like that they have taken something that's really evident in the primary documents and in the different records of how people would almost immediately after a few weeks discard their knapsacks and just roll all of their stuff up in their blankets and use that. Which is one of those details that, you know, you could easily neglect it and have everyone in identical uniforms. But ultimately, you know, the Civil War was fought by people, and they each had different preferences, and they had different ways of carrying their stuff, and it was evident that one way was more comfortable than the other because it really caught on.
I love it. As soon as you said that, I can immediately see, you know, how some players have chosen to, you know, get rid of their backpacks, and I see these other bedrolls, and, you know, I see the various feathers and the way they're handling this. So I can't wait to see this all play out. I have a big idiot smile on my face.
Well, you just described me for the last 2 years as well. Well, this is so much fun, and the way we do it on the channel when the battles are happening, I call it like a football game. And so it really plays like a football game, and it's really fun to watch.
You know, I pitched a podcast to the Trust of just that, of you know, going through an entire war slowly and calling it like a game, and it was soundly rejected, though.
Well, you know, Garry, that's why this channel doesn't have many eyeballs either.
Well, and what's interesting that you mentioned about, you know, casting it and calling it and stuff, ultimately they are replaying engagements that actually took place. So we'll be, I'm not sure if we determine the map yet, but we'll be either on South Mountain or someplace in Antietam. A specific engagement. What would be really interesting is to look at it and say, these people are pursuing a strategy or a tactical approach that's similar to what actually happened. Or on the other side, these people definitely understand the history. They've done a lot of reading about Antietam and the Maryland campaign in general, as well as the rest of the war. And they're probably adjusting their tactics to say, we've read about what happened when they just went straight through the cornfield and got bogged down on the snake trail fence. We're going to try something a little bit different. And, so much of, I think, the education about the Civil War is contingent on the fact that people need to understand that they were individuals making individual choices when these battles took place, because it's easy to discount it and say, well, I wouldn't have done this or I wouldn't have done that. And this game provides a really interesting way of putting people in those decision-making situations and saying, what would you do? How would you go about it? It's an interesting concept that this allows you to replay those situations and realize just how difficult a situation it was to be in.
Yeah, and the way War of Rights is broken down, for those of you that are joining the stream that are new to the channel, essentially they break down the Battle of Antietam, the Battle of South Mountain, and then a fictional battle that happens in Harper's Ferry. They have all the stuff that happens up on the high ground. That you can also do battles in the streets, which is pretty interesting. Not necessarily historical for this date. Jackson didn't have to, my understanding, didn't have to actually go into the town itself. Miles surrendered once he kind of got flanked by A.P. Hill up there, and they had the guns on the high ground. But here in Antietam, they'll break the map down into segments. So you'll have Hooker's Push, where Duryier's men went across the cornfield early in the morning, and Douglas's men were holding them back. That's one segment. So whoever holds Douglas's position wins that match. And that's what makes this game so interesting. And today, according to Captain Frank, we're going to be at Nicodemus Hill and Pry Ford. So Nicodemus Hill, that was the position of Jed Stewart's horse artillery up in the morning. And I believe Hooker actually sent some of Doubleday's guys to clear them out, which worked, and they retreated back to the West Woods. But here in this game, you play that attack, and we'll play that today.
I heartily concur with that description.
Well, I've been watching you a long time, Gary. I'm trying to catch up, man. You guys do such a great job at the Trust.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. And, Gary, if you wouldn't mind telling the audience just a little bit about, maybe we could start with exactly how much of the battlefield, because ultimately these maps were built based on footage and photography of the battlefield, some of which were the original photographs that are used to reconstruct the battlefield today, and others are, I believe, photographs from the battlefield as it is today. But the battlefield obviously changed a lot since 1862, so maybe if you wouldn't mind telling a little bit about how Antietam was originally preserved, and then sort of the steps that the Trust and other organizations have taken to bring it back to the way it would have looked on those fateful days in September.
Yes, I'll be glad to. Thank you. So, in summary, Antietam is lucky, or some might call it Sharpsburg. Antietam is one of the top 10 largest battles of Civil War. It's the bloodiest day. It's got the Emancipation Proclamation sort of giving it significance. It turns back Robert E. Lee on his invasion. So, and that it's located in the east. All of those things conspire to make Antietam preservable in the first place. People knew about it. The government's going to do something about it. The photographers were able to get there and take pictures and render it among the most iconic of all, Civil War places, because it's got the Dutch Church, the Burnside Bridge, the cornfield. These are places of legend, so that helps. However, when it came time to preserve the Antietam battlefield, they'd already spent too much money at Chickamauga. They knew they couldn't preserve the whole thing with the money they had, the government, that is. The government decided on an Antietam plan and just started buying strips through the battlefield so they could buy roads and put up monuments. That is the way it stood. And 40 years ago, the cornfield was not preserved. The Bloody Lane approach was not preserved. Most of the area of the south end of the battlefield was not preserved. So luckily, the Save Historic Antietam Foundation and my employer, the American Battlefield Trust, have worked with the government and everybody else and added, several hundred critical acres. And all of a sudden now, the real farm, the cornfield, all the area around Burnside Bridge, most of the final attack is preserved. Now, ironically, the places we'll be playing the game today are actually not preserved. In fact, Nicodemus Heights is just one of everybody's targets. We know the owner of the land, but we can't make anybody sell. They have to want to sell to us or to somebody else. So that one, and Prize Ford is pretty far off of the park boundaries. I don't know if anybody here has ever been there, but it is way out there. So there's a quick summary. But we've always got more going on.
Well, I can't tell you how much we appreciate the work that the Trust and the local partners that y'all have done keeping these places safe, especially, you touched on something really important, which is that Antietam is one of these big-name battles that, sadly not everyone knows about, but, enough people know about it that it has routine visitation each year. People come and see it. There are plenty of other battlefields that really, are, you wouldn't call them minor skirmishes. They're super important to the flow of the war, but they definitely don't have the same tenor as an Antietam. Speaking from experience, I'm a native Kentuckian, and I remember one of my earliest experiences with the Civil War was going and seeing a reenactment in Perryville, and I remember thinking, I don't know anything about this battle, and I'm lucky that it was preserved, but you have to wonder how many sites like that exist. In people's backyard, it could be the critical park or experience to bring someone's interest to their history, and it's just a matter of trying to muster up the resources and help organizations like the Trust be safe.
Yes. Couldn't agree more.
Man, you see D.L. Stricker here? You recognize him, Gary, from the 2nd Delaware? Those crazy Delawares represented in the TGV.
I'm glad. That's awesome. Good to see you, man.
Italian shoulder.
Guys will take historical names for themselves that represent the men that actually fought there. For example, 52nd New York and the 2nd Delaware are called the 3rd Brigade in game because they were in the 3rd Brigade under Brooks there at Antietam.
Well, I hope we don't have Lieutenant Colonel DeCoppins or Captain Waller of the 8th Florida, because you're not going to have a good day.
No, I don't think we got those guys. The 8th Florida is one of the mixed companies, and they're led by Captain Hogg, and he's a man from UK living in Canada, a scientist.
By company, right?
Not just that, but he's one heck of a commander. I mean, if you watch some of the battles that you've posted up, Joe, he's a very prominent figure, and whenever he's got some troops under his command, he always manages to use them in a very swift and actionable way, so to speak.
So Hinkle's on the stream. Welcome, Hinkle. Thanks for coming around. Gary, he says, greetings from Germany.
Hey, Hinkle. Nice to see you. Thanks for being here.
Got a lot of great people, and we're getting this thing started. They brought out their, I don't know if they were their lieutenants or their sergeants, but they brought them out. They did a roll call. Everybody's accounted for, and now they're going to start breaking up into groups. Now, there's one important thing I will bring up about War of Rights, and it's a technical thing that has to do with the game. It's impossible for a player to move in a rank and file forward like a battle line, shoulder to shoulder, because you cannot see the person to your left and your right until they're out in front of you. So what you'll see when these guys move forward in a line, they'll actually do it in a staggered formation. That's not because they're trying to do it that way, that's because they have to. But other than that, they try to do everything as historically accurate as possible.
It's almost an unintentional echelon attack, so to speak.
Yeah, what Longstreet was trying to do.
Things are getting pretty nerdy here.
Oh, yeah. That's what this channel's all about, man. We love it.
Oh, yeah.
And you can see 52nd New York in the vanguard leading the troops out. There's the 18th Carolina, Captain Winkler, and Alabama German Legion. That's the 8th Alabama, Major Greenberg here. And 8th Alabama, among those troops that flooded into the Bloody Lane and caused that confusion that allowed the Confederates to withdraw.
Yeah, and I like what you were talking about here. This idea that 52nd New York, or 51st New York, I know them from another place. But yes, these same units fought time and again at other places, even on the same battlefield. You see Confederate units under Hill, 3 of his brigades. You mentioned Douglas already. They're in the Bloody Lane, but yet you see them at the stubble field and around the cornfield. So I think it's a really good point that there's lesser known actions that often define somebody's war experience.
Yeah, in this game, one of the things that really drew me to this game, other than just being a history nerd myself, is the idea that I could never afford to be a reenactor and to go to these places. Especially, and me, I'm lucky, I'm pretty close to the battlefields. But for a lot of people, they don't have that kind of resource. So why not hop in a game like War of Rights? And these are real people, and they're in a real group, and they get together, sometimes multiple times a week to practice their shooting. And that's why you have companies in the UEC that are so deadly, because they practice. They know what they're doing.
Yeah, hello there.
Hello, Captain
I'm
Frank.
here.
Welcome to the stream.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me here.
So, guys,
Thanks for.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, thanks for coming on, and I would love it if you could talk to us, and then in particular tell Garry about exactly how you became interested in the history of the 52nd, because I think it's a really, really fascinating story, and also, to describe how so much of the history of the Civil War overlaps with the important history of the whole world, and how it appears in this amazing context, and there are so many amazing figures.
Well, first of all, thank you very much
Thanks a
for visiting us today. We feel very honored. Yeah, well, how I became interested in the 52nd. First of all, I wasn't never really interested in the American Civil War because, here in Germany, it's a part of the history lessons in school. And mainly there is the French Revolution and Napoleon, and of course the German Revolution, which was for a long time my favorite history topic. And because I live in the southwest of Germany, where the revolution were really strong and succeeded for a short period of time. And there were important figures like Friedrich Hecker and Franz Sigel. And after the revolution failed, thanks to the Prussians, I was hey, what happened to them? Because they escaped and moved over Switzerland to the UK. And one time I was interested, what after that, and followed Friedrich Hecker and Franz Sigel, and I noticed that Sigel became Major General in the Union Army. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting, and I didn't know that, and even that there were so many Germans in the Civil War. And then I'll dig in more into it. One time I played a modification for Empire Total War, and there was the unit of the 52nd New York Volunteers and Rangers in there, and I was like, wow, nice nickname. Now I want to learn more about them. And then I learned they also have the nickname Sigel Rifles, and there was the connection to my home city or my area, and I was like, wow, that's great. I want to follow them, and that's basically what I did, and dig more into it, and I think they have a pretty interesting history, especially in the Second Corps, also with the Irish Brigade next to it, and it's pretty interesting in my mind.
That's great to hear, and thanks for the kind words and for that story too. I want you to know that I've been to Germany more than any other European country because my wife is obsessed with the place and studied there for a bit. So, and I was even honeymooned in Cologne.
Ah, okay. Yeah, that's let's call it Midwest. That's basically above the place where I live. But there were
I have
also
been to
some
Freiburg and
revolutionary
Düsseldorf, so I've been closer.
Yeah, that's the city where I live right now. Yeah.
Excellent. Cool.
It's just, I always find it fascinating to think about how, when when I learned about the Civil War in school and just doing my own research, it's easy to think of it as a sort of isolated conflict, and to a certain extent it was. But the more you read into it and the more you learn about it, you also take into account the fact that there were enormous international dimensions to it. You know, for a large part of the war, the main Southern strategy is essentially to try and get European countries to intervene and create a negotiated settlement and that sort of thing. And, you know, you also have this other dimension where the Union is experiencing an enormous influx of immigrants and refugees from Europe, which was sort of still reeling from the Napoleonic Wars and that sort of thing. And it just goes to show how multi-layered the conflict is. It's easy to view it as its own isolated thing, but ultimately there are so many wonderful individual stories and stories of companies and regiments that come from individual locations in the United States and from overseas, and it's just very interesting.
Yeah, especially well, over 200,000 Germans and over 180,000 Irish were in the conflict, if I have the numbers right, and I think that's pretty impressive. So how many ethnic minorities were, especially in the Union ranks, and saw it as mostly a conflict.
It's interesting. I wonder what I've always wondered, you know, what percentage of
First company.
people from Germany and Ireland would have participated if it weren't for the citizenship hanging out there. A lot of citizens already, you know, chose to fight. I wonder how many would have if it wasn't for, you know, dangling citizenship.
Dangling. I mean, my understanding is basically when they came off the boat, they gave them a uniform, right?
Yes.
Yeah, but when we take a look at the 48ers, the so-called Lincoln 48ers, especially at the end of the war, like the guys who followed Siegel and Friedrich Ecker, who essentially saw it as... I think there's a sentence I read, which I think Lincoln said something like, our system of freedom is basically under a test, the only system in the world which guarantees freedom. It was something like that. It becomes now a real test, and especially I think the German and the Irish one, which got the tyranny, feels the tyranny back in the old world. I think they were mostly connected to that freedom and wanted to preserve the Union, because especially when we take a look at Germany at that time, with all the small states and duchies, they wanted to be part of something greater. They wanted to form a German country. And now we have they moved to the states, and now we are in the middle of a civil war, which basically rips the nation apart. And especially on the Union side, it wants to preserve the freedom of people, etc. And I think there were a lot of how can I say that, moral parts which are important that they want to preserve.
Absolutely.
Good.
But of course, there will be, like you said, Jehovah, especially later, I think, this, great, that welcome to the United States, here's your rifle, and go on.
Yeah, exactly.
Can't deny that.
Say, I got some good news and some bad news. Good news is you could be a citizen within a year or two. Bad news is you may not survive the test.
Company, like, face.
Right, face.
Very much.
Sixth company, halt.
Run.
Frank, why don't you tell us a little bit about the organization that is the 52nd New York Infantry? And, you know, we were talking a couple days ago about how you all formed to try and preserve a particular style of play. And, you know, it's been, 6 years now, basically, since November. Why don't you walk us through the way in which you all formed up and the event that you held, and what you hope to see come of the money that you've raised because of it.
Yeah, well, basically, as you said, we had our 6th anniversary last year in November. It all started from a small idea. I was coming from a different game, from the Political Wars Over, and I found this, nice game, War of Right, and I thought, I want to start something here, and I want to have a unit which wants to preserve the historical gameplay and use the original drill books. For example, we use Casey, and just because the game feels so, how can I say, real. It was very, it offers a lot of immersion, and why not preserve that with a certain style of play? And at the start, I was very alone, but after I think some weeks and months, some other people joined me, especially Germans, but also some guys from the States. I was very happy about that because to that time I didn't know that much specific about the drill, and my English is not the best, so it was a great help from the people to help me to get into the drill, into how a unit functions, especially because there was also some reenactors. And I think 5 months later, I met some other Germans who wanted to start units in this game and wanted also to preserve a certain style of play and preserve the historical rules, the historical drill books. And together we formed the German Volunteers, which is a bigger community. At the moment, we are 5 German units, all German speaking, and all try to stick to the historic drill books. And from there on, we found some other European companies. We had events together. They also wanted to preserve that history and also use the historical drill books. And after we had some events that were organized by the TGB, we once decided, hey, why not form something which is even greater? And that's basically when we formed the United European Community, which we see right now below us, drilling there. And we are now, please let me lie, 8 companies, 5 from Germany, 1 based in Italy, which is the 39th. We drilled today in their uniform. We have the 8th Florida, which is originally based in Czech. And the 51st, which is an international unit. And that's the units who are part of the United European Community. And the 52nd New York forms together with the 2nd Delaware and 18th North Carolina, 56th Virginia, and 8th Alabama, the German Volunteers. And so we have a lot of people all interested in the historical drill book and historical drills and where to play, which led some years ago to that what we can see right now, that we about every 3 to 6 months start a big battalion drill and try to really reenact such the big formations which moved over the battlefields. And we encountered a school of companies, also a bit hard, but that is even harder to handle so many people.
Well, the organization that you guys use, Frank, is just incredible. I mean, even as we speak, guys, there are people in the background running a meeting to get this event started after the drill. It's pretty impressive.
There's a lot of work and a lot of effort which we put into these events. Especially this one, we need about 2 to 3 months preparation because, first of all, a small team has to research the next orders we want to learn, dig into how they work and how they function. Then we have to break it down, how it can work in the game properly because, sadly, it's still a game and not a full simulation. So you will notice here and there that we have to make things different. And then, yeah, we basically start training the captains, which are mostly also the owners and commanders of their own unit. So it's still independent entities. And we have to teach them, tell them what we want to do, and yeah, then it's still a lot of organization. It's sometimes incredible. We are always very happy when it worked pretty well in the end.
This is two things. One, I definitely need better Wi-Fi at home. There's no doubt about that. I need to see this more clearly. And then two, I mean, we have accounts of how difficult it was for English-speaking men under German officers to respond to their commands, and the reverse as well. I mean, English-speaking officers to, issuing commands to new arrivals who had no idea about the language. So I love that you're sort of going through the same thing in putting your battalion together.
Well, to the simulation aspect, go ahead.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, to the simulation aspect, I think it's one thing I really like is the engine that the game uses. You can see all the smoke accumulating and all of this, and it goes to show just how difficult it would have been in these situations to really know what was going on. Language divides aside, it would have just been an incredibly hectic experience, and people would end up getting their clothing singed from the smoke, and it would have just been so difficult to tell what was going on. And I feel like, for better or worse, they try and model it well in this game.
Yeah, we have that sometimes in our, let's say, normal events, which we usually do on Jehovah streams. It often happens that we have, let's say, a very interesting mix in the team. Germans, French, Italians, Russians, some guys from the UK. Yeah, and when we have our small tactical meetings and when we decide what we want to do, it's sometimes, or in the heat of battle, very hard to communicate with each other because some people know English more, some less, and then it becomes really hectic and stressful when the enemy is marching towards you, the artillery shells exploding over your head, and you are there and try to communicate with someone else also not that good in English, and it sometimes can be just hilarious. And then you also start to feel the fear because you see the enemies coming closer and closer, and you're not able to respond. That can sometimes be pretty hard.
Now, Jehovah, I am looking. Are you the cinematographer here for the screen that I'm watching?
Yes.
You're doing that, and is each player? The other players are simply looking from their point of view?
That's correct. So they're all first person. So all they see, pretty much is their feet, their gun, and their hands.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's historical loading 9 times, so they have to do every one of the moves. And so you're just sitting there helpless while you're loading your weapon. And these guys, Frank won't say it himself, but I've seen the 52nd, all the UEC guys, they'll just stand there and just take punishment and deal it right back out. The tactics of the Civil Wars, people talk about it in multiple ways, but the firepower that you can generate from a line of these men shoulder to shoulder with those weapons is absolutely devastating.
Yeah, and so they found out.
Absolutely, they did. Well, we had a fight. We had a fight a couple weeks ago, and we had what over 2,000 casualties, Frank?
Quick time.
On Roulette Lane, over 2,300, I think. But to catch on what you basically said, these are now over 180 players just in first-person view, and you don't really. The problem is you don't have the feeling for your elbows or shoulders. So, you don't know if you are aligned perfectly with the guy on your right, and because it's still a game, and that makes it so incredibly hard. But the guys do it, very, very fine so far.
I want to add too that. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say after 6 years, I think you all have gotten very good at it.
There are still some flaws, but we are getting somewhere. Thank you.
That actually sounds pretty German of you to not nearly be satisfied with the precision that I see.
I know, with perfection.
Minus left
It's
wheel.
awesome.
Oh, well,
I wanted to say too, what I like about this too is I'm seeing, some decent sized units here. And, in looking at the units that are on the field here, I mean, the 52nd New York was tiny. I think they barely had 100 people. And the Louisianians that are here, I know Hayes' brigade didn't even have 600 guys in the whole brigade. So there are some really small units giving this a real sense of realism too. And then these guys, some of them are suffering 20 to 50% casualty during the battle.
yeah,
Not to
that's
mention the fact that some of them a lot of them they were mustered all from the same place. So, you'd have 30 to 50% casualties, and that would just be from one town where everyone knew, who had gone off, and there must have been an enormous amount of anxiety knowing that a unit so small, such a local place, would suffer such high attrition and casualties over time.
Yeah.
what I find kind of scary when we all started this, to think about, well, these guys should be over 1,000 strong. And well, basically we are here with 180 people, which, were sometimes, brigades in that size, and I find that kind of scary to have to imagine how many losses these are, how many lives wasted. I find it really scary.
Okay, 180 Grad Kehre hinter den anderen Einheiten.
Well, I wanted to ask, so the reason why we're gathered here, aside from the fact that it's fantastic to watch, is because you all recently did an event to celebrate the 6 years that you all have been doing this, and raise some money, and I think that that's a fantastic thing. And the Trust does a wonderful job, and they're a philanthropic organization. They do this stuff based on the donations and the gestures of interested people. So I was wondering if you wanted to talk a little bit about the money that you all raised in the event, and what you hope that it can do, and how you hope it can sort of contribute to the living history of the 52nd and the people that sort of made it happen, and the people that they're trying to honor. If you wouldn't mind talking about that for a little while.
Yeah, a little bit. I prepared a small speech for later, so I won't go too much into depth. But basically, yeah, we found out there is just one monument at Gettysburg, and since the whole game here is anchored about the Maryland campaign, especially Antietam, we were, let's say, it was interesting to know that there's nothing like that at Antietam, where the 52nd and the 2nd Delaware basically wheeled around to hold off a counterattack. And it's stuff like that, which the regiment did, and basically people died to secure a good position or hold a little bit of soil. And so I think it's important to remember the history, of course, from each regiment, of each guy, what he did to basically end this war or bring it forward or backwards, depending on your point of view. But it should be remembered what they did, and because they often gave their lives for it. And basically we would like to secure a little bit of that history for the future, from the 52nd. And that's why we want to pledge some money to the Trust, and hopefully we can help to secure the history for future generations, so they still know what's going on, and or what happened there, and can learn still from it, because hopefully history doesn't repeat itself, I would say.
Well,
sometimes.
And to that point, guys, I'll point out that found this history and what they're doing here through a video game. And I think that's really, really important that through gaming, he's now washed in this history and part of this, helping to run this awesome organization. I think that's pretty incredible.
And that's something we notice with a lot of people who are joining the companies here. because well, remember we are Europeans and we don't really have a connection to the Civil War, the American Civil War, since it's mostly not taught in the schools. And when you come here, you just want to have fun and a game which looks quite interesting. And when you join such of these units, you will always learn something about the Civil War because you can't run from it. We will teach you some history.
Wow.
Well, if you're nice, this drill, maybe I will have you in first company.
At the moment, they are
now,
gathering in a column close to mass, and
on the first company, deploy
they
column,
will
battalion,
shortly
left
deploy
face.
in the
You will,
line of
as
battle, the
instructed,
left, which
turn
is
left,
one of our
see the one of you
newest
guys making
maneuvers.
left
We did
turn,
it only once,
and on
so
command,
it's
march.
still
You
a little
will
bit
start,
hard. That's why the
marching to
Colonel
the left.
Laniel right now explains
Once
them
first
again
company
what they have to do.
has
And
passed,
hopefully it will
the
work, but
left
if
end
not, well,
of
that's a
first
drill
company
and
in
it may
front of
happen.
them, sorry, once second company has passed the left flank of first company, they will file
I'm
in
just
there.
blown
They will
away
stop, they
by
will
the
front,
organization
and they will
because
move into the
this
position
is, you've
on
heard
the
about
left
herding
of first
cats. This
company.
is herding
So will
cats.
every other
Getting
company
all
within
these
them.
guys together for these events every week, getting them trained up for fun. You know, no one's getting paid. My dream on this channel, if I ever can draw some revenue to pay soldiers, wouldn't that be awesome to give them like the actual pay that they would have been paid in the army back then?
At echelon, essentially.
Or they
Well,
make
that would be affordable compared to
wouldn't say
today's
no.
pay.
Yeah,
to be
yeah,
sure.
for sure. Oh yeah, yeah.
Inflation non-adjusted.
Oh no, no. I'll put up the poster of what they made back then. I think it was like, I don't know what it was, $10 a month or something.
Yeah, it depends on when in the war. $10, $13. But Confederate's a whole different story.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Give me an address. I'll send you some hardtack.
Maybe we should notify that note that down. We want US payment, not CS dollars.
Receive 200 pieces of Monopoly money.
Sorry. Second company, quick time forward, march.
So yeah, if any of you are new to this channel and you're seeing this game for the first time, go buy it now. You're talking about reenacting at the low price of what, $30? What a great game. And I've been tied up in it well over 2 years and look forward to every weekend watching these awesome events. So I don't think you can go wrong.
And one thing that I really admire about the game is that at the beginning and end of each match, they sort of set the scene. You know, it'd be easy just to say, you know, we'll just draw people in. I mean, it's difficult enough to design a game like this, you know, with just from the engine up. But what they've done is they've allowed for sort of a cutscene at the beginning and end to describe exactly what the situation is and how, to a certain extent, the battle began, which I think is important to add, because there's so many games out there that either do historical simulation or they are to be historically focused, but they don't really give any of the actual context as to what's happening. This is a really, really intricate move here. This is fantastic.
Yeah, these guys are incredible.
First sergeant, take post there.
That's
Right
also
first.
something where
Right backwards in this game.
all the things starts about learning the Civil War. You don't have any connection to it because after the battle you will see a video what happened there, where that is on that certain battlefield, and what will happen next. And yeah, then you start learning more and more about this war.
Yeah, Campfire Games does a great job. Just the detail. The game is just absolutely beautiful, and I know, Gary, watching it through the Discord stream of my screen is not giving it justice of how good this game actually looks.
Right, good job.
Yeah. Yeah, oh, I've seen it on your videos. Is you know, I can see the quality of it, and this is even right now. This is so cool. It almost gives me chills going along the line like that. It provides you views and an experience you can't otherwise have. It's great.
Usually this would simply be done by dressing, but again, it's a little bit more.
Yeah, and we've made historical videos on the channel, and the UEC guys have assisted with those videos and showing, you know, teaching history, you know, with this kind of video element available to you. it stands out. You know, you get an opportunity to use a lot of different media, because I know you guys are doing your animated battle maps, which are just state of the art, incredible.
Yeah, thanks. But, this adds something that we can't possibly add. We try to throw in battle smoke and make the lines move a little bit. These are individual.
Change your front, forward.
I'm making a list of things we need to talk about later, Jehovah.
Great. Yeah, these guys
And,
are just...
Fifth company, right?
Fourth company, right half.
Yeah, and these guys are always going to help.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry.
I was just going to say it lends itself to a really important sort of size distinction. I mean, reading the Wikipedia article or even a more in-depth description of a battle, you hear words like, this company or this regiment or this brigade or this corps. And while on a map you can sort of visualize these boxes of abstract shape and size moving around, until you learn about the different sizes and the actual effective sizes of, say, a corps or a brigade or a division, it's very difficult to visualize. And what this game does is it allows you to take that map and that top-down view and then pair it with, a company or a regimental level of engagement. And I think that fills I wouldn't say an enormous gap, but definitely a barrier to sort of put yourself in the situation, which I think a lot of people try and do. They want to research it and they want to be involved in it, but it's hard to get a sense of the scale and the size and where the boxes on a map turn into real actual individuals moving back and forth.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, there's the lessons are already legion. Just seeing, the men like this, like, going from column or marching into line like that, you might be able to see it in a reenactment, but on almost where I talk about how visible the flags are, and how your experience is, 50 feet around you, and playing this first person must just be incredible because you can't get these grand sweeping views that Jehovah's showing us now. Look at that, so cool.
And why it's so great that Jehovah comes along and starts recording this, because basically the private down there in the ranks doesn't really know what's going on around him. The officers knows it a little bit more because hopefully they learned all the stuff and know what they should do and what will happen. But even also the colonel, since we are still missing horses in the game, it's sometimes hard to see what's going on. Is everybody on the right place? And that's why it's so beneficial for us to have Jehovah here to record all that, because basically after that every private will watch it again because they want to know what they did. And we as unit commanders and officers and battalion staff will also go through again to evaluate what did we good, what was bad, what do we have to do again. And that's why it's so great to have Joe over here.
Well,
thank you, man.
Thank you, Frank. Taking the technology of football down again, right? Where we're just watching film. You go out there, you play the battle every week. You go back, you watch the film. Oh, how did I do here? How did I do there? I've even passed out awards to guys for achieving glorious things on the channel because it's through your escapades, Frank, and all the guys here at the UEC that this channel exists at all. I mean, I'm not out here doing this. So, and just happy to be here.
And we're happy to have you.
Yeah, so Gary, I'll give out, we have artillery in the game now, and so if your line gets completely destroyed by artillery, I pass out an award called Yankee Jam or Confederate Jelly, and it's basically a jar of the remains of what's left of your company, because there's nothing.
Hey guys, we'll be doing the
Well,
same
yeah, I mean, that's how we talk internally, but I could never say that on a trust video. Oh man, I'd get destroyed.
Yeah, of course.
Let's go. Fix.
I would love to just see people watch something like this. The people who don't play, people who only know the war a little, say buffs or maybe slight nerds, and just answer their questions. The uniform pieces, the maneuvers, and one day it would be great great to have Chris White commenting on some of this colleague who's really good on all this on all the stuff that I'm not.
45 degrees to the left, and you will advance until
Oh yeah, we all know Chris.
I think we would be glad to have him here, and it would be also a little bit scary because we know he knows definitely for sure what we are doing wrong right now.
Well, don't worry. He's been with capable units and every version of them. But he can be a hard case, that's for sure.
Well, and what's interesting to think about is the fact that so many of those early disasters for the Union, or later on in the war when the Confederate manpower supply is running really, really low, you start to see more errors. And it's not as though it's just a matter of experience. These maneuvers are very, very difficult to get down, and you can only imagine how much more difficult it would be, say during a second Manassas type deal where you've been being marched around day and night for days on end trying to figure out and pin down where the Confederate army is, and then you're sleep deprived and hungry, and then now all of a sudden you're being asked to do, a right wheel or something, and you're not sure if the person is asking your company to do it or if they're asking the one over to do it. You've forgotten the number of company that you are or anything like that. And it's those mistakes which I think a game like this makes more understandable, that played into so much of the decisive moments of not only a battle but the war in general. Ultimately, it took a very, very long time for any group, no matter the level of experience, to get the movement down pat and to make it a really effective tactic. And that's something I think that playing this game really illustrates, because it's hard to know where you are. It's hard to know where you are in the midst of a chaotic situation like this.
Can't agree more. Our respect for colonels of that time or battalion commanders of that time grows so immensely when we started the battalion drills, because it's so hard to control them, and we do it here in a safe space in the battalion and the drill camp, where nobody is firing at us. There's no artillery coming at us, no rain or stuff like that. A small controlled space, and even there, it's so hard to get the movements done. And we will maybe see it later in the battle when we are splitting up to both sides. The battalion gets smaller, but still it's so hard because, for today we wanted to start something new and added also for the first time artillery into our battles, our battalion fights, and also skirmisher units. And well, we are all interested how it will work, and if we are still able to move these battalions in a correct way, because I think it will be pretty hard.
Well done, gentlemen. Well done, left wing. Good work. I hope that looked nice from the sky.
It did indeed, Todd. It did indeed.
Right wing, get ready.
Fifth company, ready.
Ready.
Left
wing,
take aim.
Company aim.
Company aim.
Hey.
Fire!
Would not want to be standing in front of that.
No. Wow.
Depends. If it's at the start of the war, they all would shoot too high.
Arms.
Just thought I'd make a few of you jealous real quick. Since I've been on this stream, I could have driven from my house to Antietam and back.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. We can't do that, sadly, and that's why this game is such a good opportunity to basically do let's say virtual reenactment with stuff like that. We have some reenactors in our ranks. I didn't know that outside of the States, that the biggest Civil War reenactments are in Germany. I knew that. Quite interesting, I think. And it's definitely a goal for me once COVID is over to go there and do some real reenactments and get a feeling how it was really when you're down there in the field. And I'm pretty hyped for it. I can't wait.
Yeah, we're going to have 400 reenactors, a Confederate set with the Liberty Rifles on some of our land at Antietam for the 160th this September. I think it's full already, but it is, when you see the full battalion drill, oh man, it's going to be cool.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
I was there this year,
I'm a bit
as you guys
jealous.
were. So, man, 160, that's going to be something. They had artillery placed this year at 159. Pretty nice.
Yes. I think they're going to have some horse-drawn artillery for 160, and we're going to shoot some virtual reality video, too, I think, with Wide Awake Films.
That's awesome.
Wow.
It'll be cool.
But it just goes to say, if you live near a Civil War battlefield, go out and see it. not everyone can.
Well,
no.
Yes, please do it.
Here's something.
I would gladly take your spot.
Well, I take full advantage of that, I confess.
Well, and if you're watching this and you see all these number and it looks really impressive, I'll remind you, this is less than 200 men. Imagine how many men approached the Bloody Lane up on that hill over and over again, right? Just waves and waves and waves of men coming over the hill.
I'm always trying to do that. I do it on my page all the time. I try to post a picture with, 70 people, 300 people and say, now imagine a brigade.
Yeah.
Imagine a division. Crazy.
Yeah, and what I want to do and what we're going to try to do with the UEC, if we can ever get the time, is to snap a picture at this level here, and if I can get them to go in different positions, then we can recreate what it looks like to have 6,000 men in a position.
Yeah.
Just by comping it in, I think that would look really incredible. We've done a little bit of that on the Duryea video. We had we had cropped them in, kind of just special effects that they do on. Back in 1986, I'm getting to now in here, so we can add extra men to make it look more full.
Tutto a sinistra, tutto in fondo alla linea, via.
That looks pretty full right there, though.
But
when you multiply that by the fact that you take this many people and you also put them into a camp, like this is the drill camp map. You can only imagine what it would have been like to walk through this endless maze of pup tents, or if it was wintertime, the sort of ramshackle dugouts that they would have, and to see the scale of that would be fascinating. Obviously, it would require an enormous amount of space, but I can only imagine just how huge these tent cities would be.
It's a pretty line, Frank.
Stay like this.
Yeah, now they're standing in a good line. They're doing good. Here.
All right, so I imagine drill is coming to an end here momentarily.
Yeah, I think they will do the last maneuver, and then we'll go slowly to the end, and yeah, then we have something still prepared with my unit, and after that we are going to the battles, and then we will see this in action, one battalion against another one.
Get on the same level as the 56.
Yeah, and the one thing about this game that we can't see here right now, Gary, is the fact that these battlefields are almost identical to real life. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Well, later we will. Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say it's an interesting blend of not necessarily revision, but I find it funny to think that we have these Matthew Brady photographs of what the battlefield looked like in 1862, and then an organization like the Trust uses those to try and refurbish the battlefield to look as it did, for the sake of historical aspect and to honor the battlefield. And then once that's happened and the battlefield looks sort of resembling to a certain extent what it did, you get development like this, or for any virtual experience, that go to the battlefield now and take scans and photographs and in a way remake a remake of the field. And it all wouldn't be possible without devoted people working in the game, and also the Trust making the battlefields into the way that they once were.
When I went out there this year, my express purpose was to go to the places where we fight in the game and see how close it was. And the one that surprised me the most was Otto and Sherrick Farm, because in game there's no creek that runs down through there, and in real life there's a creek that splits the two.
Yeah, that's a pretty deep ravine too. And I just, by the way, thanks for saying that. I couldn't agree more. Even if I didn't work for the trust, I would say that, you know, when we secured, we about 7 years ago were able to purchase 44 acres, everything between the cornfield and the Dunker Church and the Hagerstown Pike and the Smoketown Road. We call it the epicenter. You know, the first thing the Park Service asked us to do is to take down one line of trees running down the middle. And for the first time in 90 years, you could see from the cornfield to the Dunker Church and back. And that was an astounding revelation. And if you can't see what the soldiers saw, I mean, really not a properly restored battlefield.
That's right. You guys are doing incredible work, and if you guys are out there watching this stream and you got extra change in your pocket, throw it at the American Battlefield Trust. These guys are trying to get out, preserve this land, and they do an incredible job. I was at Antietam years ago, 2014, 2012, something like that. And the area where Douglas's men were, the epicenter, as you were talking about, Gary, that they had a house on it. It wasn't in the Park Service, I don't believe, at that time. And now I've gone back this year, and it's just beautifully opened up. There's some new plants there. Really incredible work.
Good. Yeah, we were able to work. And thank you so much. By the way, that's battlefields.org for the website, for those you don't know. And we were able to work with the Maryland Highway Administration to replant some of the East Woods on the epicenter. We worked with the local historical preservation group, SHAF, Save Historic Antietam Foundation, to take down the house and the barn and remove those trees. And then we transferred it to the Park Service, because we can do all that stuff much easier than the government can. And now it's in there. They're incorporating their trail system. It's a model of what we can do together when we all work together. And by the way, you know, if you want to get involved with the trust, you don't have any money, that's okay. Just sign up for our emails, and then we'll entice you to get more involved after that.
Yeah, that is awesome.
Yeah, that's really great that you have something like the trust over there to preserve that part of your history. And as you said, it makes it possible to do, create remakes of your remakes and bring these battlefields to others who have not the possibility to go there, at least for the moment, and they can experience it here in the game, and that's really great. And your videos about how it looks in game and how it does really look there is very interesting for us and our people, because we just know it from the pictures and from in-game, but to see a real video walking down there to the hotspots on these maps is really interesting and teaches us a lot, and that's it's sometimes all about.
So Gary, has there ever been any talk or have I heard something that are they interested in doing agricultural type training? Because these battlefields seem like a really good opportunity to go back and plant things that were actually there at that time, and train people in agriculture as they're getting that done. I don't know how the battlefields handle that, like who handles that land and who takes care of the farm, because I notice a lot of crops that are there today would not be historically accurate.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. The answer to that is yes, to everything you just said, because it's all over the map. The historical manner of taking care of, stewarding so much land is to lease it out to local farmers. They already know what they're doing and whatnot. But unlike the farmers of the past, I mean, local farmers will not sign agreements to put corn in a field 6 years in a row and let it go destroy the soil. They need to rotate. So, I mean, the cornfield and many of those are right 3 out of the 4 years. And some of them are never right because there's no market for it. So I think it's a sort of a best you can do situation where, each park is a little different, but the government is the main lessor of it. But the trust, we own 12,000 acres. So we lease out a lot of land to local farmers, and we try to get them to plant the right things. But it's not the same as in the past. There's a wide variety, and if soy is up, farmers want to plant soy. So outside of that, we work with other conservation groups and look for every grant that we can in order to keep the land in a way that not only resembles the battle, but also helps to pay for its stewardship. Owning rural land is a pain in the rear. Hunters, renters, suicides, dumps, everything happens on rural land when you own it. So you want a farmer there. Sometimes you want a hunter there so that people won't come on there. The last thing you want to do is go around with people with guns and whatnot. So I expanded on your question a little bit.
Well, no,
but,
that's a great point.
It is all over the map. It's a great question and one we struggle with.
No, that's a great point. Yeah.
And just to touch on the sort of benefits of this sort of historical preservation, I know that Gary could probably talk about the different reports that the Trust has put out, the battlefield means business and things, but our organization, Canopy Heritage, what we're doing at this point is looking for ways to basically get the financial sector to recognize the value that conservation and historical preservation have. Because as it stands, you know, for community reinvestment purposes, most banks look to inner cities to try and refurbish derelict housing and apartment blocks and things like that. But there's an enormously, to use more modern lingo, a slept-on opportunity in field and rural land conservation and preservation, because the economic benefit of having clean water and clean air and having sustainable forest land and agriculture, really, it's incalculable, not only to future generations, but even in the near term. There's enormous research to suggest that having a few hectares of stewarded over forest land increase the viability of commercial agriculture by a factor of 2, if not more, just because the pollinators and the natural counterbalances to pests that would normally thrive on nutrient-rich fruit. The nature provides a balance, and it's one thing that we're trying to do, for Canopy at least, to try and bring banks' attention to the fact that working with organizations like the Trust or other land conservancies has a really unique potential both for community reinvestment and a more robust and sustainable economy in general.
Battalion
I second that, and thanks to Canopy Heritage.
Auge, jetzt ist hier Platz.
All right, well, this drill looks to be wrapping up. Great job once again by the whole battalion.
Hold.
So here's what we're doing on the streams today. We're gonna end this drill, and I'll do a little outro, and then we're gonna do a special ceremony with the 52nd New York for raising the money for the Trust, and then we'll head into the battles. So, guys, we appreciate you being here with us today, and I echo all. I say that from all of these guys because everyone is. Nobody knew about this. We kept it completely quiet, so only a few people in higher ranks of UEC really even knew about it. So we're gonna surprise all these boys with you guys being here, and we really, really appreciate it.
Cool, super cool.
Yeah, just can grab on this. Thank you very much for being here. It was also an honor. But yo, I've shortly something still to say about the donation. So yeah, we will see us shortly again. But first, I have to organize my men for that. So I will be back in some minutes.
Alright, I'll move my boys forward. 6th company, quick time forward.
So Gary, what do you think about? I mean, does this? I don't know. What were your expectations of the game coming in? Did it satisfy what you thought it was?
Oh, it definitely. Thank you. It's definitely exceeding them. I think I'd seen enough screen caps and I'd watched enough Jehovah videos to know to some extent what to expect. But now that I'm not watching something curated. I'm actually watching it play out and knowing a little bit more about it, that these are individuals, that how much work must go into falling into line, let alone going through the, other maneuvers necessary for this. It has my mind reeling with the possibilities of the platform and how cool this must be, especially for those who don't have the opportunity to either reenact, let alone even visit these places. So it has greatly exceeded it, and I'm glad I'm here today.
Well, we appreciate that, man. These guys just look so good. I am always impressed. And the crazy thing is they do this during battles. So they'll just be there getting shot to pieces and still, okay, 5 files left. March.
I like when I see the rocks. I mean, because I'm very familiar with these limestone outcrops all over the Antietam battlefield, and I'm seeing, even in game, I'm starting to see like those. I mean, I know what those actually look like in person. In fact, I'm going to post something on my page about these outcrops and something about what we're doing. Look at that, how great the resolution is when you zoom in. And not to mention your ability, Jehovah, to control the stream and to do live cinematography of these events is something that really beats a reenactment.
I appreciate that, but I can't take credit for it, man. The in-game camera is something that really has made me so happy with War of Rights. It's my favorite game now. The channel has really gone over to War of Rights because not only because I love the history, but the cinematic camera just makes this. It's like watching a new Civil War movie every week. It really is beautiful.
I believe it.
All right.
Well, like we were talking about, it allows you to get a unique perspective as to the flow of these battles. It really does allow you to zoom in and see individual people and what they're seeing, sort of, in terms of how a battle would appear to a person in the first person. And then you can also bring it out and see one particular company or one unit that is maybe doing a flanking maneuver or organizing and bracing for an attack. And then you can zoom out even further and you can see the entire tactical layout. You can really go at every single possible level and slice it as thin as you want. And I think that's something that you do very well with the camera control, and also that War of Rights has done. And it's accompanied even more with the amazing battlefield videos and the maps that the Trust has made to really give someone a full 110% picture of what it would have been to be in the field at the time.
Well, yeah, Gary. I mean, think about it like your battle maps when the animated soldiers come up and they start facing off and they start shooting at each other. I mean, you could even zoom in and have a bunch of guys in game, reenact that position. It's pretty incredible.
Oh, don't you worry. I'm making notes, and that's one of the exact things I want to work with you guys on. What sort of stock things and curated elements could we get? Because what I see right away isn't just making cool videos. I think they'll resonate with our members and users, and will actually raise more money for battlefield preservation. So just what you're doing even could have great potential.
I hope so. That's why we're here. We all grow together, and we're trying to bolster the number of these units. And if you're new to the game, or if you're interested in the game and want to play with one of these fine regiments, we can get you in touch with anybody in War of Rights. Not just the UEC. There are all kinds of North American units as well, and they're all would be happy to welcome you to their ranks.